If you're a homeowner that you're going to build and you are worried, write it into the contract. Get an independent inspector, but don't just get Joe Blow like this. Get somebody that knows, get somebody that's educated, and get them to do inspections. So you can have 5 to 6 hold points along the project that are, critical to the success or critical to the code alignment. Just build those into the contract. Essentially, it's just a guy visiting the site. A builder knows that inspector has got no impact on them whatsoever because they don't have a contract with them. You've pointed this out in your podcast previously, Amelia, but it does give the client either peace of mind or awareness that something's wrong, and then they can act on that. So as a builder, I've never said to anybody, no, you can't have anyone on site. I have bi-weekly meetings with every single client that I build for. They should be on site. They should know what's going on. It's as simple as that. And if the builders want to keep you at arm's length, then build into the contract that you can have independent inspections, 5 hold points at critical points in the project, and that should solve the problem.
It's very clear that you've got a systems brain in terms of how you kind of break this down. Like you're thinking, how do I scale? How do I, speed things up? So when you look at footage of you building your sites, you're bringing these wall panels in all of the layers, except obviously the gyprock's not on yet, is it? It's the gyprock goes on in situ?
No. Or claddings.
Yep. Okay. And so how then are you making those connections between roof and walls and slabs and walls and things like that airtight as you kind of bring these things into place?
Think Proclima. Proclima has a solution for everything. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a distributor. I've been to every possible scenario. I've had it. And I've done a house down, it's about an hour south of here, and it just had every problem you could have with a certified passive house. An undercroft garage, it had 3-stop lift, which was inside and outside the thermal envelope, inside, outside the airtight envelope. It had a balcony. It had a 3-stage, 3 different elevations in the house. It had everything. When we talk about a cacophony of problems, it had them. But there was a solution for every single problem that we came up with. There was a solution. Those details are details that you work through. Like, I can't go into every single detail, but yeah. We have 3 A3 sheets that we've generated over the past few years. Those A3 sheets are standard details. So an architect comes to us with a design. We say, right, import this into your drawing set. These are the standard details. So that's floor to wall connection, wall to floor on upper floor connections, roof to wall, raking ceilings, flat ceilings, junction detailing, internal wall, external walls, air tightness detail junctions. They're all worked out and they're all standard details at this point for us.
That's fantastic. That must give the architect a really good head start in terms of understanding how to design correctly for those areas. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's brilliant. Yeah. Awesome. So, all right. And so I can see obviously with all of those wraps, that's going to deal with your condensation management and all of those kind of things. How do you deal with any thermal bridging or anything like that?
So you engineer it out if you can at all. If at all possible, you will always engineer to timber frame if you can. And then if you get bulk framing, you always pull it to the internal so that you get insulation external of it. So it becomes part of the internal structure, and therefore it's at ambient temperature as is the structure, if you know what I mean. So you don't want it external. So if there's any steel, we will pull that into the structure and we'll insulate outside it.
Gotcha. Yeah. So then it's not changing in temperature to then. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it never actually gets that energy to transfer into the building. That's the ideal scenario. As we all know, it's not that easy. We've just finished a house in Chewart Hill, and it's got like cantilevers that are 1.5 meters, like straight up and across, like barn style, 1.5 meters out, and they're only 140 mil in depth. Like that in itself is a challenge. But it looks $1 million, and it did take a couple of meetings with like Fitch beams and stuff like that with the architect and the engineers. We got there in the end, and that will be, I would say, probably 6 months off from being a certified low energy building. It won't be passive house, but it'll be a low energy building.
Fantastic. And so do you do exactly the same approach whether the house is being certified passive or not, like in terms of your choices that you make as you're building based on what the clients ask for?
Yes and no. The ideal scenario is yes, but it's never the ideal scenario. It all comes down to budget for the client. What can the client afford, and what's the maximum benefits we can get that client to give them a healthy living environment? So we'll mix and match, and we'll use our experience to get the best possible outcome for the client. That's not always a certified passive house. We've built 55 odd homes and only 4 of them are certified. So
Okay.
that tells you that it's not possible. Where we can, we will, and where the client has the money to do it, we will. But the approach, if it's passive principles, the approach is exactly the same. You will get the same details, you will get the same airtightness testing, you will get the same attention to detail and structure. It won't be any different. Like I don't know when's the last time we were above 2 in an airtightness test. I think we had 1.4 or something last year sometime, but yeah, we're generally under 1. And that's not, yeah, it's not something to brag about. It's just something that's a natural occurrence.
It is something to brag about, given that
Nah, like
most homes are between like 15 and 39. So
most passive
yeah.
house guys, though, that's where they're at. Once you work out your systems and your processes and you've got the right trades and everything, it's, you know, it's just a default of good planning.
Yeah. I think that's the thing though, isn't it? Is that everybody needs to be on board with the fact, because what often happens in traditional builds is that you've got, you know, the electrician will get up there and will move some insulation out of place and put the light fittings in and not put things back together. And you'll have people punching holes in the wrap, and you'll have all
Yeah.
sorts of things happening. So it requires that education of the team and the management of the team and those systems and processes to ensure that it's executed properly on site.
Yeah, I've yet to meet a trade that hasn't bought in, though. As soon as it's explained and they understand what it's about, they're very excited about it. And it is, we all term the phrase rabbit hole. It is a rabbit hole, but it's a rabbit hole of, you know, progressive succession. Everybody wants to do better. Naturally, everybody wants to do better. And if they can be involved in something that's better, then they're all for it. And they will make that little bit of an effort. And I found that in all trades that we've had. Like, we've yet to have a trade who just doesn't care. You know what I mean? If we explain it properly, and that's why I do those open houses. I do Friday night sundowner events, do a full presentation on passive house, explain everything, and I invite all my trades, my suppliers, everyone comes, and they just get it. You know, knowledge is everything.
That's fantastic.
It's absolutely
Brian.
everything.
Now, in terms of the timber frame versus the conventional building materials in Western Australia, I just wanted to talk through, because my experience was, when I started working with West Australian clients, was that they were building with double brick. Dimension heights were measured in courses, not necessarily in dimensions.
Yep.
They were doing suspended slabs for their upper floor, which is really only reserved for commercial or high-end architectural construction, I find, in the eastern states, to do suspended concrete slabs like that. And they just had, they were often not even lining the internal brickwork. It was just being
Rendered.
bagged, rendered. How have you gone about then building timber frame homes in that environment, in terms of how homeowners have taken on board that as an alternative construction methodology to what they've seen elsewhere in Western Australia?
Look, it's been a very difficult process. It has, because you have to be competitive with what's already there. The industry itself, if you look anywhere in the world, you build with the commodities that you have available to you. And brick, there's quarries everywhere. And basically WA is a sandpit. So there's sand everywhere, there's clay everywhere. So that's a commodity that we have, and it's super, super cheap. And that's why we build with brick. It's the same as the reason the pyramids are built with rock, because there's plenty of it there. When you go to the southwest or the Great Southern in Western Australia, a lot of the homes down there, probably 90% of them are timber frame, because there's timber everywhere. So we build with brick in Perth because we can, and because the majority of the building companies build with brick, because it's cheap commodity and it's readily available. So now that that's out of the way, how do we compete? Yeah, that's a very, very, very difficult thing. So we, as of today, we still don't make money building passive house. We put them out there, we make a living, we don't make money. And that's because we have to be competitive with the industry. That's, like, I was talking to you a little bit earlier about the podcast that I did, my personal one. This is kind of where I went down that rabbit hole in that podcast, where I got angry with myself. But it's been like 6, 7 odd years, or even 8 years of working in a business where we have to try and create an industry to work in it. Does that make sense?
It does. It does very much so. Yep.
Now, to create an industry of, like, there's been houses built with timber frame before in WA, but to then try and build passive house, like, which you're basically an alien in Western Australia, to try and do something like this. There's a lot of compromises that have to be made. And a lot of those compromises just come back to money. So you can't make money as a business. You can make a living and you can survive. The whole process of me having, you know, the huge approach was like, D-Day will come. The codes will change. And I know that everybody will want this process. So if I can make it as simple as possible, then someday I will make money. Now that's starting to change now. The organic progression has pushed us into the, the elitist industry, which is fantastic. We're looking really fresh and good for, the next however many years. It's fantastic to see that coming. But it is a very difficult market to work in. Now, right now, as we look at it, we see the majority of the project builders have switched their two-story model to lower floor brick, concrete upper floor, and timber frame upstairs, because of the new construction codes and how they're going to change. If they're going to hit that 7-star, they're already modeling houses and building houses with that. So we can see the change coming. It's only a matter of time. So one of two things can happen. The performance of brick can be upgraded. If we look at Europe, a lot of Europe is built with brick and block, and it's still high performance. What the issue with WA is that it's not financially viable. If you were to build the same high performance home as we do, you would be more expensive than us. And we've done the research. The product is not here. It's not available. And then the next issue is, can you do it sustainably? So if we ignore the carbon footprint of brick for a minute, how are you going to insulate it? Well, the products available are, let's forget XPS and EPS because we don't want that in the industry. Let's go PIR. So if we put a PIR insulation into a brick cavity wall, we're going to get very expensive. And then if we have to look at thermal bridging through the lintels of windows, then we look at Catnick lintels, which are across Europe, which is a bent lintel with PIR insulation in the middle for thermal bridging. Now we're getting really expensive. So I think there just needs to be solutions for the brick industry, and the brick industry will come along. As soon as somebody gets that solution and they, make it kind of, I don't think it can be financially viable. The industry will have to come a little bit more, but if they can make it anyway financially viable, they'll adopt it. Absolutely they will. But at the moment, easiest process is double brick downstairs and timber frame upstairs. And that's ticking the boxes in the NatHERS software.
I think it's always tricky, isn't it? Because I think when people are thinking about building or renovating, they find it at face value, it's very difficult to compare apples with apples, because you'll just look at one product versus another, and that one looks dramatically cheaper. But what you're not understanding is what is required to bring that up to the standard that this product is at. And nobody's really talking about that. And you talk to the people that build that product, and they're so committed to building that product that they're not going to share anything about what might be, it might be lacking in. And so it does, I think as a homeowner, you have to learn so much in order to then be able to assess those with any kind of equity to make the best choice for yourself. So it's really interesting because and it is that thing of, we've always built, I mean, in eastern states, we're building in brick veneer, and we've built in brick veneer for donkeys. And, I worked for Mirvac for a long time. A lot of our homes were brick veneer on the lower floor and then lightweight on the upper floor. And there was always a decision made that you didn't want lightweight where you could touch it, because particularly you didn't want rendered lightweight where you could touch it, because it looks heavier than it sounds. And so you don't want somebody thinking that they've got a heavy house that then they knock on the wall of and it sounds flimsy. So if we were ever to use lightweight, it had to look like a lightweight house. In Queensland, you can get away with that because that's a weatherboard house. But in Sydney and in Melbourne, that's not, like weatherboard houses don't proliferate in the same way. So it's this
That's a marketing thing though.
Yeah.
That's like, there's a monopoly on marketing with the brick industry, and they market that it's not a good house if you knock on the wall and it sounds hollow. Like, seriously?
Yeah.
That for me. And anyway, let's not go down that rabbit hole.
No, there's so many. It's like I've said lots of times that the laminate and vinyl flooring industry, for some reason, has managed to convince homeowners that their floors in their homes need to be waterproof, and has managed to
marketing's a wonderful thing.
Flooring on the basis of this. So, all right, now National Construction Code, it is a bit of a black box, and that's I think for industry. Like, one of the big things that I've seen people struggling with is even the fact that it's structured very differently to what it has been in the past. They've restructured it so that it's easier to kind of have it online and all of those kinds of things, and bring it up to speed with, more contemporary publishing methods. But just when you've been doing this for a while, to get your brain geared to that is challenging. And so then for a homeowner to kind of navigate it, what do you think that homeowners need to be aware of so that they're sure that their builder is A, up to speed, B, isn't talking porkies, and, you know, that they don't have to feel like they have to become experts in it? Because what I keep saying to homeowners is, at the end of the day, it is not your job to know absolutely everything, because you don't want to take on the risk that it actually belongs in the sphere of your professionals to own and be responsible for. So how do you suggest that homeowners kind of navigate this with the people that they're working with?
Very, very simple. This is really simple. If you go to HIA or Master Builders or any of those government bodies, or like, they all do presentations on the NCC changes, and they itemize exactly what the changes are, and they tell you what is and isn't important. And not only that, they'll then tell you what the risks are. If you're a homeowner and you're building and you want to know, just go to one of those courses. That, for me, is the answer. They've done the heavy lifting for you. You don't have to read all 5 books. Just go there. These guys will tell you what the differences are and what you need to be aware of. That's my piece of advice. Like, if you're a homeowner, you don't need to know the code inside out. You really don't. You need to know what the changes are, and it's not business as usual. So if it's not business as usual, what are the changes? Well, the changes are identified by Master Builders, by HIA, by even the ABCB. There's plenty of courses out there. Plenty.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that it is fantastic how equitable the access is to this information now.
Yeah.
And like you say, you go, particularly on the ABCB's website, they have a bunch of presentations on each of the different areas.
Yeah.
And you just need to remember that class 1, if you're doing an individual home, that's the one that you
Yeah.
need to worry about. And so looking at those individual presentations on what the specific changes are. And then I think do you find that you have homeowners asking you questions like this about, you know, are you up to speed? Or is it just because you feel like your education's out there and you're so far ahead of the game anyway that you know that the clients come to you knowing that you've got this already in hand?
Look, if I'm honest, most of the clients come to us because we are. Like, they know we're already ahead of it. We've had one client in the past who requested if they could have independent inspections. No drama.
Mhm.
We wrote it into the contract. If you're a homeowner that you're going to build and you are worried, write it into the contract. Get an independent inspector, but don't just go get Joe Blow. Like this, get somebody that knows, get somebody that's educated, and get them to do inspections. So you could have 5 to 6 hold points along the project that are, you know, critical to the success or critical to the code alignment. Just build those into the contract. Essentially, it's just a guy visiting the site. A builder knows that that inspector has got no impact on them whatsoever, because they don't have a contract with them. You've pointed this out in your podcast previously, Amelia, but it does give the client either peace of mind or awareness that something's wrong, and then they can act on that. So as a builder, I've never said to anybody, no, you can't have anyone on site. I have bi-weekly meetings with every single client that I build for. They should be on site. They should know what's going on. It's as simple as that. And if the builders want to keep you at arm's length, then build into the contract that you can have independent inspections, 5 hold points at, you know, critical points in the project, and that should solve the problem.
I was really shocked because when you were on the Sustainable Builders Yak talking with the other founding members, and you mentioned that Western Australia, you don't have to have an engineer come and inspect the footings, and you don't have somebody inspect you don't in that you have those inspection points in the eastern states. So in Western Australia, when you build a house, is it all just on the builder to certify that those things have been done correctly?
Yep. Yeah. Gunslingers.
Wow. I mean, in the eastern states, I think when you have a lot of volume builders, the structural engineer potentially doesn't even get out of the car. But it's
Look, there is
the fact that there's actually still those requirements, you know, it gives the homeowner at least some earmarks to know, okay, this is where I can inject somebody if I need to.
But look, they don't have inspections during the build process. But if that person sells the house at any point, there's an independent building inspection prior to sale. And if there's any issues at that point, they'll be identified, and that builder will be called to come back and do it. So most of the builders, like, there's very few builders that don't do what they're supposed to do structurally. I will say that, because I've been called out to several. I was an independent inspector for several projects, and there's probably 1 or 2 builders who are, oh, I don't want to get in that now, but look, they're just in it for the money, and they're from over east. They've got an office here in Perth, and they just don't care. They just build whatever, and it's a shelf company, and they'll work for 2 or 3 years, then they'll get rid of the company and they'll move on. And those guys you have to be careful of. But for the most part, like the seasoned guys that's been around for years here, they do the right thing. They really do. Like when it comes to structure, they do. They can't afford it. It's their license on the line. They can't get bad publicity.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I wasn't aware that that's how it was run in Western Australia. So it was really interesting to hear. So
Was that not ditched in was it New South Wales? I thought that inspection thing was ditched not so long ago.
I don't believe so. I think it's still required. I know that on all
Okay.
the projects I've worked on, it's been necessary. So
Yeah, I
it's
thought
not
one state
necessarily
ditched it through COVID or after COVID. I thought
right.
one. Yeah, I could be
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah. So I know that in some locations that like the engineer, for example, doesn't necessarily need to be the one that does the footings. The building certifier can, and they come out and they just check that it's as per the structural engineering drawings. But
Yeah.
my recommendations I know when I was working with clients and obviously through Undercover Architect community has always been, get the engineer to look at it. So, and I think too, it's also that thing of understanding that, as we've said time and time again, the inspector, like you said, it's a really great piece of advice. Make sure you don't get Joe Blow as the inspector, because a lot of inspection companies that I see out there selling their inspection services, they're just inspecting based on meeting code. And I think homeowners aren't aware of how bare minimum code is until they're faced with looking at their house, not being happy with the result, but then being told, well, it's been built to code. So, it's that thing of understanding what the value systems and the goals of your inspector are, and then also, as you said, understanding that the contract is not between the inspector and the builder, but between you and the builder. So how are you going to use that information? So
yeah. There are inspections in Western Australia for anything that's like reactive soils. So any engineer that you get a quotation from will insist on an inspection prior to pour. So if you're in reactive soil of any kind, you will have an inspection by the engineer, and if you don't, that's kind of on you. But there is a whole point, and it's in any quotation that I've seen from a structural engineer. But given that the majority of the houses in Perth are on Class S, they're sand sites. So we just have soak wells and concrete on sand. It's it's the risk is pretty minimal unless you're on fill.
Gotcha.
Yep.
All right. Now, we talked a little bit about Sustainable Builders Yak and Sustainable Builders Alliance and the timing of the website and things like that. What is the goals? Like, why have you guys, because I think anybody from the outside will go, well, why aren't you still being Builders Declare? Like, what's the difference, and why have you guys decided to set this up as its own sort of entity with its own website and all of those types of things?
Kind of a difficult question. This went back to way back when, and we've gone through this in our own podcast. At the very start, we were, doing a couple of bits and pieces, and then we decided, what are we doing? We kept asking the question, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And we kept going around in circles. Well, we want to get information out there, and we want to get information out there, and we want to get information out there. And eventually, we came to the realization that if we're going to change the industry, we're going to do it right. And the only way to do it right was to have a separate entity. It can't be Builders Declare that's tied to all of the Declare movements that's out there. Because if we want to push this thing properly, and we want to give, education, and eventually, we should be able to offer courses. And there's a whole conversation going on at the moment with how much we can actually do with this business. And it had to be a separate entity. And that was, there's several people that advised us on that as well. The name was we wanted to be aligned with sustainability. So Sustainable Builders Alliance was a name that I think was, might have been Michael Lim or Jeremy came up with that, I think. But either way, it was, we just knew it had to be something different.
Fantastic. And so it sounds like goals are to actually be sort of the education powerhouse for sustainable construction.
If possible, it'll be an organic growth thing. We'll keep pushing the information out there, and then if we're approached, we'll get involved and we'll assist. That's kind of our approach at the moment. But we're not going to go out and start talking to, the education department and say, oh, look who we are, we can do this. That's kind of not our approach. Our approach is put the information out there, and if organically it grows and organically people want to get more information from us, then we'll entertain that. There's huge potential there for even consultation and everything. There's 7 of us, there's so much knowledge in that room. It's incredible. So it's just, I guess for us, there'll be a point at some point, I reckon, where, we'll be required to have more time and involvement in Sustainable Builders Alliance, and we may not be able to give it, that's kind of where it's at the moment, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
No, it's really exciting. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys all create together. So you've done such amazing work already, given that it's been done as a passion project around all of your own businesses, and the fact that you don't necessarily, I know that the other guys are largely Victorian and you're the one on the West Coast. But yeah,
I'm the token.
Managing it all remotely has been amazing. So
Yeah.
now, before we wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to add or let the Undercover Architect community know about?
No, just I'd like to commend you on what you do. It's absolutely incredible work that you do. Thank you for having us on, and thank you for continuously pushing our information out there. You're constantly spruiking us, and we really appreciate that. Being aligned with you is fantastic for us. We call them guerrilla organizations, but they're not. Like people like you and us as a group, what we do, we really value it. And I think the proof is in the pudding. There's to have the growth that we've had and had the growth that you've had in such short periods of time, and have that many people listening and commending you in what you do. It's testament to the great work that you're doing and the information that you're putting out there. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you, Brian. That's super kind and generous of you. I really appreciate it. I think that Undercover Architects always operated on a mantra of a rising tide floats all boats, and it's so at odds to the experience that I had entering the construction and architectural industry, that what I love is that to see the change and how much things are shifting and how passionate people are really making a change to the quality of homes that people get to build, and also the experience that they get to have whilst they build it. And I just love, like, the Undercover Architect community is just the most incredible community, and to be able to share Sustainable Builders Yak and Builders Declare and the knowledge that you guys share so actively with them to ultimately help them, not only create a better home, but change the world one house at a time. To me, I think we just have, we underestimate the power that each of us have as individuals to really create change. And I get so excited because what I see is that people are no longer waiting. They're not waiting to be told that this is what they have to do. They're actually starting to live in their values and think, okay, this is important to me. And whilst it needs to be balanced with budget and the competing demands that I have on my life, I'm going to lean into what I know is important to me, and this is what I'm going to make happen. And so everybody's doing it in their own way, which is so fantastic. And I just love that there's room for people to express it in their own way, and that we can all then come together and share that knowledge and information collaboratively. So it's really awesome. So I really thank you for being here and sharing what you know about, you've just, I know that I've only scratched the surface of the incredible wealth of knowledge that you have and experience that you have. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, particularly when you're so close to going away as well. So
no problem.
I will put all the information in the resources. I really do encourage Undercover Architect community. I find that listening to the Sustainable Builders Yak, I often wonder what it's like as a homeowner, because I know as an architect, I feel like I'm sitting in on conversations that I've seen happen in construction circles. I've had the benefit of working inside development companies and things like that, where as an architect, you are at the coalface of construction in a way that you're not when you're a consultant to that process. And so I love that homeowners get to hear that as well in that kind of environment, that you get to hear, because I think the conversations that industry have with homeowners is quite different to what happens within industry. And for homeowners to get an insight, not only into what they need to know, but also what industry is navigating in the competing demands, in the way that we work as an economy and as an industry, just helps them know then better information for their projects. So thank you so much for the work that you do, and for the other founding members as well. It's awesome, and it's been really great to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it.